Hello and welcome to week 4 of Introduction to Healthcare and Business Analytics. Now this week we're going to talk a lot about use cases in healthcare and business analytics. And we're going to talk a lot about what is a use case. It's a term many of you may have heard before, but it is often difficult to find out exactly what it all means. So we'll talk about that. We'll talk about the elements of a that we typically see within a use case. And I'm going to go for an example use case. We're going to talk about supply chain management. This is an area that has relevance both for business users and for healthcare users, and we'll have our discussion as a result of that. Now, next week, I'll take this another step further, and we'll go through some additional use cases in some other areas dealing with both healthcare and business. So this will be an introduction to the concept of use cases and an example with a follow-on next week where we'll dive into some additional examples. So use cases in healthcare and business. So what does all that mean? So what is a use case? A use case is a description. It is an objective. It is a description of how a person who actually uses a process or system will accomplish the goals they are setting out to do. It helps you understand where errors could occur in the process and design features to resolve those errors. So it is essentially stating your objective and getting into essentially what it is that will define what success looks like in all of that. So what are the elements of a good use case? There are about 10 items here that I want to get into. First of all, a use case has to link to a strategic goal. It can't just be done for its own sake. It has to link to a strategic goal. It has to have measures of success. So if you can't manage what you can't measure is an old phrase that it's often used and is certainly applicable here. So what are the measures of success? So these are key performance indicators that you're going to use as you're managing that use case. Who is the owner of that use case? I apologize, my cat is being a brat. Who is the owner of the use case? A use case has to have an owner. Who are the users and the data customers for that use case? Who is going to be using the information that you are ultimately putting together? What is the data that is required? What is the data governance processes for that data? How is it going to be managed? How are you going to know who accesses it? How are you going to be able to deal with things such as compliance and privacy and data access rights and data life cycles and all of that if you need to do that? What kind of analysis are you going to be doing, and how are you going to be going about it? What is the technology you have at your disposal to be able to work through this use case? Do you have enough? Do you need any more? And also, what is the skills and capacity that you have to manage this use case? And the same thing, do you have enough? Do you need more skills than you currently have within your team or within your organization? And we'll talk about implementation and change management, another key component for a use case. So first of all, a use case has to tie to a strategic goal. It has to tie to an organizational objective. This will allow you to identify your data-related goal in more detail, help you understand the questions that you need to answer, and also, is there a specific problem that you're trying to solve? Is there a research question you're trying to solve? Is there a process you're trying to improve? All of these things have to be tied to a specific strategic goal, and we'll go into that for one example here, and there'll be more examples that we'll go through next week. So now, measures of success, KPIs. We've talked about these earlier. What is a KPI? It is a key performance indicator. So what needles are you looking to move? So what is the item that you are specifically trying to affect? If you've taken any kind of statistics courses, you've talked about dependent and independent variables. So a dependent variable is the variable that you're most interested in understanding what causes it to change, because it may be something that you want to change in a different direction. So that is the needle that you're trying to move. So an example would be something like customer satisfaction data. So and you may be asking yourself a question if, say, for example, I were to reduce call wait times in my call center, and also throughput in terms of responding to orders and responding to inquiries, is that going to have a net positive or net negative improvement in my customer KPIs, of which one of the more common ones is called a net promoter score. When I was in consulting, that was a score that we watched like a proverbial hawk, because it had an indication as to whether or not a client was happy with us and whether a client may in fact want to bring us back for additional engagements. So a use case owner, this is very, very important. Who is actually responsible for this? And it should be somebody in the business area, somebody who has a stake in how this all comes out. This is not something that, unless you are solving an IT-related problem, this is not something that typically should come out of IT. One of the mistakes I often see within organizations when it comes to analytics is that they say, well, analytics uses computers, IT manages computers, so IT runs analytics. And IT should not run analytics. They should keep the trains running on time. They should provide the back-end processes for analytics, but they are not in a position to understand business problems as it relates to analytics. So if you're trying to deal with a customer net promoter score, somebody who's in an IT shop isn't going to necessarily understand that. If you're in a healthcare environment and you're trying to reduce patient adverse effects or adverse events, your use case owner should be somebody on the clinical side who understands that and who understands the different things that have to be done. It is not somebody in IT who is going to tell somebody in a hospital how they're going to be able to respond to and manage reductions in adverse events such as infections or patient falls. So if you don't have one person responsible, it may never get done. That's the bottom line on use cases. You have got users and data customers. So who is going to be the customer of your data? Who are the different types of groups that are going to be using the information that you are putting together? And you have different skill levels. And I have seen use cases that talk to the wrong skill levels, that fall apart because they don't necessarily take that into consideration. So you may have people who are casual users. They only look at the data occasionally. They're going to need more support than they do, because then when they get back into it again, they're going to forget what they were looking at. It's the same thing. We all have systems that we access very, very occasionally, and we kind of scratch our heads and say, okay, I think I remember how to do this, but I don't quite remember. So those folks may actually need more help from you in terms of understanding the system that you're dealing with. And pardon my cat again. Then you have super users. These are people who have a high level of data manipulation skills and are probably also very closely tied to the area that you're interested in. And they may need less help. They may actually need more granularity on the data because they may want to analyze the data themselves. And then finally, you have subject matter experts, and these are people who you would identify as being within, who you would identify as having significant subject matter expertise in the area that you're interested in. And those are folks that are not only going to need a lot of support in terms of managing the use case, but they can also be a great help to you in terms of solutioning and creating the processes and solution that you're trying to manage through this specific use case. Now, keeping also in mind, subject matter experts are almost always super users in their own right, but that doesn't mean that they're super users in every part of the business. You may have somebody who is a subject matter expert in infection control in a hospital, but that doesn't mean that they're a subject matter expert in billing, for example. So they may be a casual user in that situation. So it's not a one size fits all in terms of how that all works. So here's an example of a data architecture that is often used. You have, and I want to get, and this will make sense when we get into the next portions of this, but you have multiple levels. You have enterprise analytics, you have a data marketplace dealing with structured and unstructured data. You have data management pieces which put it all together, such as catalogs and integration hubs. Things such as the Informatica, for example, is a data management tool that can do that. And then you have a number of transaction systems, and you have a number of back-end systems which are going to feed all that, whether it be things such as Oracle or Epic, and you're in the healthcare environment, or SAP or Salesforce, or any of those pieces. So there are multiple layers in a data architecture. So the required data that you're going to need, what is the data that's needed and where is it going to come from? It may be structured data in that it comes from things such as databases or spreadsheets. It could be unstructured. It could be filtering text off of things such as social media posts or off of Google comments, or and there are tools that are available out there that will filter out somewhat what different people were saying and can take the pieces out of that and can and then can use essentially natural language processing to give you an idea as to where things may happen to be going. I saw a fascinating demonstration of this a couple of years ago at a SaaS conference where they were showing a SaaS tool to assess Twitter feeds, and it was doing it in real time, and you could see how an organization's net customer satisfaction was changing even on a second-by-second basis just by analyzing these Twitter feeds. Now, when you're dealing with data from multiple systems, you have got issues with you have data quality and data matching challenges. You could have say for example you are looking to combine your hospital patient data with a claims data set. So you may have information coming in from two different sources indicating that a certain patient has received certain things, but you need to be sure that you can match that person appropriately. You may have John Smith, and you may have Jonathan Smith. Is that the same person? You may have Jonathan Smith at 128 3rd Street or 128 THIRD Street. So you end up with these different types of matching that you have to then get into understanding are the matchings happening correctly. Dates of birth can be even different in different places. If you're from Europe and you typically write down your birth as being month day year. In the States we mark it down as month day year. We mark it down as month day year. So my wife is from England. She marks down her birthday as 8/1, even though she was born in January, because whereas we would mark it down 1/8. So those kind of things can cause matching issues. So you can end up with false positive or false negative matches. You can also have timing issues where somebody may be matched based upon an old address versus a new address, and people move around a great deal. So there's a lot of challenges when it comes to matching data from different sources that have to be overcome. Now, a key component of this is that your data governance and management processes. Now, this is something that we've talked about before, but it includes your data quality, your ethics, your privacy, your data definitions, your ownership, your access rights, and security. Data ownership can be very critical. If you may need data that somebody else has. Is that data freely available or not? If you're dealing from an outside organization, you may have to buy data from them to be able to use it. Not all data can be used freely, especially in the healthcare environment. You have issues such as HIPAA, where you can't simply take patient data and combine it willy-nilly and send it out someplace else because you're dealing with HIPAA violations. So in some cases you may have to get specific consent for use. In some cases you may have to deal with regulatory approval or IRB approval to be able to work with these data at these different levels. And there are I could do a whole course on data privacy and data management just by itself, because the issues can be so significant. Data quality is another big issue when you're dealing with multiple systems. You have to ensure data quality is there at every stage. You may be in a situation where you're updating data from different systems and their timings are different. You may have one system is updated daily, one system is updated continuously, one system is updated weekly, another system may be updated quarterly. And you put those pieces of information together, you're going to have different things with different timings talking about different areas. And so being able to understand that and being able to work through it is a key component of dealing with your data governance and data management in terms of a use case. Data analysis. Now here's where we get into how you're going to actually turn your data into insights. This is where you need to specify what the research question is that you're trying to answer. What is it you're trying to do? It is important that you have an idea of what is success going to look like. And then from there, You determine what kind of analytics is best suited for the analysis that you're trying to do. Are you simply doing descriptive analytics where you're looking backwards in time and showing and being able to give people information as to what may have happened? Is that adequate for what you're doing? It might very well be. Are you getting, or do you want to provide any kind of dashboarding and get people into go turning data into some degree of rudimentary insights? Do you want to be able to? Do you want to do to be able to take advantage of some of the more advanced analytics, such as predictive and prescriptive and cognitive analytics, to be able to feed different processes as they're going on? And then you also need to decide how this is going to be delivered to the user. We've talked about push reports versus pull reports last week. We had these same issues. So within the development of the use case is where you get into how those different things are going to be done. So again, a use case in this situation is you are defining the problem, you are defining the objectives, you're defining the different pieces that are involved, who was going to be involved, and also what is it that success is going to look like, and what are the questions you're trying to answer. Technology. Do you have the right technology, software, hardware, network throughput that you need to store and collect and analyze and communicate the results? Do you have? I've seen systems that look great on paper, but the amount of data that you would be adding exceed the capacity of that system to handle, whether it be from a storage capacity or a processing capacity. You need to look at growth plans. If you have a system where you're going to be adding, say, a terabyte of data a week because you are having to manage a certain process, well, then you have to be sure that you have sufficient storage capacity to handle that amount of throughput for a period of time. You may have a system where you're going to be adding a terabyte of data a week, but maybe every 6 months you're going to be offloading a terabyte of data. So how you do that and how different things get offloaded and archived need to be specified. So this is where you need to be sure that you have adequate resources, or do you have to procure additional resources to be able to do that? And this is where the partnership between the business side and the IT side is going to be key, because while it is certainly not reasonable to expect the IT side to understand the business needs, it is also not reasonable to expect the business side to understand the technology needs. And so the various groups have to work in partnership to be able to answer these questions. And the next piece is, do you have the skills and capacity? So where we've done an inventory of hardware and software and throughput and capacity from a technical perspective, you also need to have a dispassionate inventory of the skills you have available within the organization to be able to do this. Do you have sufficient skills to be able to answer these kinds of questions? Do you need to go out and get either additional people or additional expertise to be able to do that? It could be something. You may be trying to answer a high-level research question on patient adverse events, but you don't have anybody on staff who understands that sufficiently from a data perspective. So you may need to go out and bring somebody else in. You may want to apply predictive analytics to your data to create different scoring patterns, but you don't have somebody on staff with sufficient statistical background to be able to do that in a way which is going to pass methodological muster. So you may need to go out and get someone to do that. So assessing your skills capacity is as important as assessing your technical and organizational capacity. And then finally, where are you in terms of implementation and change management? Just as you were managing any other kind of project, what are the challenges to executing this project? What are the potential roadblocks? What are the potential issues and risks? All these are part of your implementation plan. And do you have the tools to prepare and help individuals in making the organizational change? So if you are going to be creating a new reporting system because you're looking to bend a certain curve in the organization, well, how that curve gets bent has to be bought into by the rest of the organization, and they have to be held accountable for bending that curve. I was involved in a project a few years ago, and I was in a consulting group out in Western Pennsylvania, where they were working with hospitals to help them bend reduce readmissions, and they developed a data and a workflow process to be able to do that. Well, a key component was making sure that the hospitals involved were actually following the process that was being done. So when you're doing this and you're creating something which is going to impact someone's workflow, then the expectation is that person whose workflow has been changed has to be accountable for that workflow being changed, so that you can be able to judge whether or not the changes you're making are in fact happening. So let's talk about this now. I've talked about use cases conceptually, so let's put a specific item onto it. So let's talk a little bit about supply chain management and how all that works. So what we're going to do is we're going to define a hypothetical use case for supply chain management. And next week we're going to go through another 4 or 5 of these to kind of give you an idea in different areas. Now, I chose supply chain management because it's an area that rings true for both healthcare and for business users. One of the things I've been wanting to do within this course is not have it sound entirely like a healthcare analytics course or entirely like a business analytics course, because there are some differences amongst them, but there are also areas that are the same. And whether you're a healthcare organization or whether you are a retail organization or whether you're a retail business, you all have issues in terms of managing supply chain. And anybody who's been following the COVID-19 pandemic in dealing with supply chain shortages, both on the business side because things aren't being shipped in on time, or on the healthcare side in terms of things such as getting timely access to PPEs and access to other kinds of healthcare equipment, can see that managing supply chain is a very important activity. So first of all, let's just talk about it. Let's just talk about a link to a strategic goal, and that all sequential activities and its suppliers undertake from production to final distribution. That's essentially a general description of what supply chain is. So this is essentially what we're going to try and get a handle on that. So let's talk about some measures of success. We've got I've got a few listed out here. There are many more that can be done. But inventory turnover. How do you manage your inventory? If you are in a retail organization, how often do you sell off your entire inventory over the course of the year? How you manage your inventory is very, very critical. You don't want to have items that are sitting around not being sold because you bought too many and you're paying for too much storage space. On the other hand, you don't want to be in a situation where you have shortages and you can't sell something because somebody's looking for something you don't have. So managing inventory turnover is a very critical element. Inventory accuracy. If you say something, if you're a retail business and you're selling something and you say that you got it in stock and somebody orders it and they say that, and then you look and you go, uh-oh, I don't have that in stock. I know my inventory said I did. And then you have to turn around to a customer and say, oh, I'm sorry, we thought we had that product. We don't. We have to put it on back order. You're going to have some unsatisfied customers, and then that's going to have an impact on your customer, on your net promoter scores and your ratings and your reviews. So if you're not able to do that, so your accuracy of your inventory and how you manage that is very, very critical. Delivery and shipment times. Are your shipments going out on time? Or are your deliveries going out on time? Cash to cash cycle. This is how you can calculate your time for paying for supplies to selling the finished product. So essentially, are you the point from which you are paying for something to which you are getting paid for something. And then also your warranty cost as a percentage of sales. So how much are you spending on repair and replacement of units compared to total sales? These are 5 KPIs that are often used within supply chain. Now there are many more, and this is designed to give you kind of a taste for a supply chain problem. This is not designed to be an exhaustive look at supply chain, because there would be courses and courses and courses you could take just on that subject by itself. So let's look at the owners and the customers. So the owner could be the head of operations, the head of production. It could be somebody within that area. Your customers could be your sales and marketing areas. You could be your vendor management areas. If you are a retail organization and you have stores, your store managers could be customers of all of this. Anybody who's going to be working within these different kinds of systems. So let's look at your data. So some of the required data you would have would be your ERP, enterprise resource planning data, your sales data, your inventory data, your financial data, any of your claims and billing data would be all required in all of this. And your data governance, what we talked about with general data governance would all apply here. Your data quality is going to be critical. Your timeliness is going to be critical. The different data elements are going to be critical. Now, you're not necessarily going to have there are usually not privacy issues involved with this kind of data because you're just dealing with essentially supply chain management, with the exception of the fact that there may be some situations where you may be dealing with some proprietary data in terms of internal pricing or things that you may not necessarily want different vendors to know. When I was at United Healthcare for a number of years ago, there were a couple of data elements that we simply never shared with anybody else, dealing with how much an actual medical claim was being paid for, because to release that would tend to alert other providers what their contractual arrangements were that were specific provider to provider. So even in a situation such as goods and services, you may have some proprietary shields in there in various places. Your processing and technology. So from your data analysis perspective, you probably want to develop some type of a data mart, which has extracts probably on a daily basis from your various source systems. And here you'd be using things such as your ERP data, your sales and inventory data. You would probably use some type of statistical management software such as SAS or R. If you're doing any kind of risk scoring or any kind of other management scoring, you could use systems like that, and those would all be reporting out to some type of end user reporting system. Whether and as we talked about last week, that could be as simple as an Excel spreadsheet, all the way up to a Tableau dashboard or a Power BI dashboard, or it could be an alert system which is being sent out. If you wanted to say, okay, if my inventory falls below a certain threshold, I want someone to know. Or if my time delays go above a certain threshold, I may want someone to know. But any of those systems could be able to manage that for you. So the people component, the skills and capacity. Do you have the skills in data management and analytics? Do you have report development skills? Do you have subject matter expertise in the areas that you're all trying to do? Do you have statistical background if you're doing any kind of predictive or prescriptive analytics in terms of any kind of risk scoring? And also in terms of implementation and change management, do you have the desired end states? Do you know what it is that you're ultimately trying to do? Do you know what it is in terms of the different curves you're trying to bend? Any kind of definitions that you're doing should be reviewed at least once a year, and it should also be reviewed when new products or services are added. So that is essentially where we are for this week's discussion. I have another YouTube available on the site, which I want you to also take a look at, which talks about some of these materials. And then for our discussion for week 4, I'd like you to discuss what you believe is the greatest unmet need for analytics in your current career path. We have people in the course from a variety of areas. I think it'll be interesting to see what it all is that you're trying to do. So I want to thank you all for listening to this today and for watching my cat run across my desk occasionally. And I will look forward to seeing you on the discussions at CQ Online, and we'll speak next week. Thank you.